What is up, you lovely beings? Today I thought we would talk all about the power of choice and how our body and our mind respond differently to exercise when we actually choose to do it versus how our body and our mind respond to exercise when we feel forced or we feel pressured into doing it. There's a lot of different angles that we're going to look at, but first of all, we're going to be talking about exercise adherence, or sticking to going to the gym, or sticking to exercise in the long term. I am sure we have all felt the pressure to exercise in order to change our body or to look a certain way. And this is usually an external or an extrinsic motivation that comes from society, or it comes from adverts telling us that we need to get bikini ready or summer ready. And it can be helpful for motivating us over a short amount of time because we feel that shame or we feel that stress. We think that we're not good enough. Slight tangent, you already have a bikini body, you're already summer ready. After seeing these ads and after getting this external pressure, you probably might hit the gym. You might get in and start working out really hard for a certain amount of time, but after a while it probably drops off and you go back to a more sedentary lifestyle. Now, what happens if we make the choice to work out for ourselves based on an intrinsic motivation, not based on the external pressures? Not because we want to change how our body looks, but because we know it makes us feel good to move, or we like going outside and getting fresh air, or we like the challenge of picking up a heavier weight every week. The studies have shown that we're better able to stick to exercise plans and we have a better adherence to long-term exercise protocols when we're intrinsically motivated in that way. When we think about being motivated intrinsically, so that motivation is coming from within ourselves, there's this idea in psychology called self-determination theory, and it suggests that our ability to develop internal motivation or to be fulfilled within ourselves is based on three main components: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And autonomy is the big one of relevance today, and it refers to how free we feel our choices are. Are we in charge of ourselves and our lives, or is somebody else? One paper said that how stable our motivation is based on the perceived degree of autonomy. So we can be highly motivated to do something for a long amount of time if it feels like to us that we are making the choice ourselves. This study was particularly looking at exercise protocols in regards to weight loss, and they found that the opposite is true as well. If you don't feel free to make your own choices, then you're probably not going to stick to something for as long. I'm going to quote the study by saying, in fact, the pervasiveness of social and medical pressures toward weight loss combined with externally prescriptive methods may be ill-suited to promote sustained increases in population physical activity levels. In some, large numbers of individuals are either unmotivated or not sufficiently motivated to be physically active, or are motivated by types of externally driven motivation, and that does not lead to sustained activity. We need to understand where our motivation is coming from. Are we really doing this for ourselves? And this extends even further. It extends to how difficult we find exercise. When we feel that we've actively made the choice to exercise versus when we feel like we're forced into it, we have a more positive exercise experience and we have more positive attitudes towards physical activity. Who would have thought? People who chose to exercise or who wanted to also had a lower RPE, which means they had a lower rating of perceived exertion, or they found the exercise less difficult. That means if there were two of me doing the same workout, if one of me wanted to partake in the exercise and the other did not, but we both did it anyways, one side of me would have found the workout way harder, and that same side of me would have had higher rates of psychological distress as well. I'm starting to see a pattern here. I'm starting to see the power of choice. And there's actually a fair amount of animal research into this when the researchers use rats. There's a few papers where researchers compare rats who are forced to exercise compared to those who can exercise whenever they wanted to, of their own volition, exercising their autonomy. Those voluntary exercise little ratties were able to jump on the wheel whenever they wanted, but the other ratties were forced onto the treadmill for a certain amount of time. And at the end of these experiments, they find that there are differences in brain function between the voluntary and the forced exercise group. They found that the rats that chose to exercise showed less of a corticosteroid response, so they found less of a stress response than the forced group. On the other side, that forced group had higher stress levels and it had higher anxiety-like behaviors, and that forced group had lower levels of BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and BDNF has actually been associated with character traits like resilience. So if you're forced to exercise, it's making you less resilient and it's making you more anxious. On top of this, researchers also also compared rats that are recovering from a stroke, and they followed their motor recovery and compared groups that were forced to exercise versus those who chose to. And the same pattern emerges. Voluntary exercise led to a better motor recovery. Are you guys listening? I'm not saying that we should generalize from humans to rats or rats to humans, but it's a really exciting concept. If you had that power of choice and you felt empowered or inspired to take your health into your own hands, you understood how it was going to help you, you wanted to do it for yourself, then you could have a better recovery compared to somebody who wasn't given any of that information and they were just told to do it because you just have to. Just be obedient, just get it done. Just do it, otherwise bad things will happen. Do you kind of get what I'm saying? And the list of differences between forced and voluntary exercise using little ratties is endless. The last big difference that I'm going to touch on is how long-term forced exercise can contribute to mood issues and emotional dysregulation. And so what can we take from this? That we're all actually just little rats and we want to be able to choose what happens to us. What I think we should take from this is that we need to be able to increase our internal or our intrinsic motivation so that we can stick to things for a longer amount of time and so that we can feel empowered in our choices. So what can you do to increase your internal motivation? Well, we're going to go back to what I said at the beginning about self-determination theory and the three really important things that I mentioned, which were autonomy, competence, and relatedness, and how these things could help you to improve your intrinsic motivation. So we're all familiar with autonomy now. We need the ability to govern ourselves. But the second factor is competence, or the need to be effective or to feel like we're good at something. With exercise, this could look like working with a coach that gives you positive feedback, or working with someone who isn't overly critical and actually wants to help you learn. Or it can look like giving yourself grace and allowing yourself to be a beginner. If you want to learn a new skill like Olympic lifting or yoga or even lifting weights for the first time, make sure you have a supportive environment because it'll make you feel more competent and that will help with that internal motivation. And that brings me to the last factor, which is relatedness. And this refers to the need that we have to have close, intimate, and fulfilling personal relationships. So when you're going to the gym, go with a friend if you can, or maybe even join a lifting club, or join a running club if running is the exercise that you want to take up. You could even go to a group class. Does that all make sense? Yeah. The biggest technique that I use to try and increase my internal motivation is to really ask myself why I'm going to the gym that day. Is it to look good for other people? Is it to fit in? Or is it because it makes me feel happy and good? If I figure out that the reason that I'm going is for me, then I feel way more excited about going. And if I figure out the reason is because I feel pressured to, or because I feel like I should, or if I don't go, I'm a failure or I'm going to be judged, then I don't go. Or I try my best not to go. I try my best to listen and to think about where that's coming from. And it's okay if you don't go. What's important is that all of these techniques, or focusing on each of those factors, they can help contribute to making you enjoy exercise or physical activity. And it can make you feel like you're in control of your own life. So those are my 2 cents. And all of that research, I feel, is really showing us the power of choice. It's showing us why it's important to work out because you want to and because you choose to. Do not force yourself to go. So take the time to find something that you like. Go with people that you like. Don't do stuff you hate. I'm so bored of this boring cardio narrative. Don't walk on the treadmill for an hour. That sounds boring. If you like it, go to a dance class. Life is too short for boring cardio. Go try some virtual reality, a boxing class. Play tag with someone. Have sex. Yes, physical activity is so important. But as we've learned today, it is equally as important to feel empowered in the decisions that we make. You are wonderful and you deserve to move in a way that makes you feel good. I hope that makes sense. I hope you got something from this, everybody. Have a great day, little ratties. See you next time. Bye.